welcome to Understand All. I'm your host, Aslakir Gerleif. Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey into the world of the obedience experiment. So, buckle up and get ready to question everything you thought you knew about human behavior. Imagine this. You're in a fancy restaurant, and the waiter tells you to throw your soup at another diner. Would you do it? No? What if they said, "Pretty please"? Believe it or not, there's a famous experiment that proves we might be more like soup throwers than we'd like to admit. Picture the world after World War II like a teenager after a wild party. Everyone's asking, what just happened, and why did we let it? It's in this context that psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted a series of experiments that would change our understanding of obedience forever. Milgram was inspired by the Nuremberg trials, where Nazi war criminals claimed they were just following orders. He wanted to know, could ordinary people be coerced into committing heinous acts under the right circumstances? The answer, as it turns out, is a resounding yes. Here's how the experiment worked. Imagine a weird game show where you've got the host, that's the experimenter, the contestant, that's you, and the person behind the curtain, that's the learner. Your job is to ask the learner questions and shock them with increasing voltage when they get it wrong. Sounds simple enough, right? Now here's the kicker. In Milgram's original 1961 experiment, a whopping 65% of participants administered the maximum 450-volt shock to the learner when instructed by the authority figure. That's according to Milgram's groundbreaking paper published in the Journal of Abnormal and Social Psychology. 65%. That's more people than those who can name all the Kardashians. But wait, there's more. Milgram didn't stop there. He conducted variations of the experiment to see how different factors influenced obedience. Plot twist number 1. When the learner was in the same room as the teacher, obedience dropped to 40%. And when participants had to physically touch the learner, it plummeted to 30%. I guess proximity does make the heart grow. Less shock happy. But what about authority? Surely people wouldn't obey if the orders came from someone less imposing than a lab-coated scientist, right? Well, when the experimenter gave instructions over the phone, obedience dropped to 21%. Still a concerning number, but it shows that the physical presence of authority plays a significant role. Now let's talk about peer influence. In one variation, when participants were part of a group and saw others refuse to continue, obedience plummeted to a mere 10%. This highlights the power of social conformity and how seeing others stand up to authority can inspire us to do the same. But here's the real shocker. A 2017 study conducted in Poland, as reported in the journal Social, Psychological, and Personality Science, found a staggering 90% obedience rate. This suggests that cultural and temporal factors can greatly influence the results. Now you might be thinking, wasn't this experiment super unethical? And you'd be right. The Milgram experiment raised more eyebrows than a surprised emoji convention. It's why we now have ethics boards ensuring experiments are more measure your heart rate and less potentially traumatize you for science. In fact, the experiment led to significant changes in psychological research guidelines and the establishment of institutional review boards, as noted by Diana Baumrind in her 1964 critique published in The American Psychologist. But here's the thing. Milgram's follow-up studies found that most participants didn't suffer long-term harm and were actually glad to have participated. Talk about a plot twist. So, what can we learn from all this? Well, the Milgram experiment highlights the power of situational factors in shaping human behavior. It shows that under the right circumstances, even ordinary people can be coerced into committing acts they would never dream of doing on their own. But it's not all doom and gloom. The experiment also teaches us the importance of questioning authority and standing up for what we believe in. It's a reminder that we all have the power to resist pressure and make ethical choices, even in the face of intimidating authority figures. So, the next time your boss asks you to do something questionable, remember, you're not just an employee, you're a potential Milgram experiment participant. But armed with the knowledge of these findings, you can be better prepared to make the right choice. And that brings us to the big takeaway. Your moral compass might need recalibrating when someone in a lab coat starts giving orders. Always pack your ethical GPS, folks. But don't just take my word for it. I want you to pause for a moment and think about a time when you followed an order you weren't comfortable with. No judgment, we've all been there. Except you, Karen. You're perfect. The Milgram experiment may have been conducted decades ago, but its implications are still relevant today. From understanding the psychology behind destructive obedience to training people to resist unethical orders, the lessons learned from this study continue to shape our understanding of human behavior. So there you have it. The experiment that proved we're all potentially one lab coat away from making questionable decisions. But armed with this knowledge, we can strive to be more aware of the influence of authority and make a conscious effort to question orders that don't align with our values. Your homework? Question authority, but maybe don't throw soup at anyone, unless they really deserve it. Just kidding. Or am I? Tune in next time to find out. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the obedience experiment and gained some valuable insights along the way. Remember, the key is to stay curious, think critically, and always strive to do what's right, even in the face of pressure. If you found this episode enlightening, be sure to share it with a friend who could use a reminder to question authority. And don't forget to tune in next time for more mind-blowing explorations of the human psyche. Until then, this is Aslakir Gerleaf, reminding you to always pack your ethical compass and never be afraid to stand up for what you believe in. Stay curious, my friends, and never stop questioning the world around you.